Hi, it's Frank O'Leary, Medford resident and board member of the Medford Community Coalition, and I'm here with Max Heinrich.
You got a Heinegg.
Heinegg, also a Medford resident and 19-year high school teacher at the Medford High School.
Yep. So 5 years at the combined Brooks Hobbs and Andrews, and then 14 years at 489 Winthrop.
Nice. What do you teach at the high
So
school?
I am the honors and standard English teacher for 12th and 10th grade, and I am the advisor for the high school newspaper and the creator and advisor of the high school academic arts magazine,
Wow,
which a lot of people don't know exists.
I
Which is
didn't know it existed either.
www.mhsmantra.com.
MHSmantra.com.
Yep.
Great. And one of the other things that people may not be aware of is that you're one of the co-creators and brewers of the Medford Brewing Company, and
Yep.
just released a beer.
Yep. So I'm the co-founder of Medford Brewing Company with my friend Nick Belaytho. We met through our daughters, who are both seventh graders at the Andrews. I've been a home brewer for over a decade, and we started Medford Brewing Company, putting out our first beer about 2 months ago, and we've sold out twice now, Medford and the surrounding areas, and we're looking to launch 4 different beers over the course of the next year, and eventually to have a tap room and hopefully essentially a brewery in Medford, and to have everybody down and create a community space.
That's awesome.
That's
the
the goal.
the beer is delicious, because obviously you can tell I've had my fair share of beers through the years, but it's great. I love the it's very citrusy,
Yep.
which is great. What
Yep.
what are the stores around here that have it?
So pretty much almost every store in Medford has it, but we are at Atlas, we're at Giles, we're at Cappy's, we're also at Salvatore's, Bistro 5. We are pretty much throughout Medford, Bargain Spot across from Paul Revere, and everywhere that pretty much you can get Medford beer in Medford, we're there. And also, we're in Somerville and Cambridge, and pushing out also into Acton and Concord,
Wow.
and we're spreading out basically one can at a time.
Okay, exactly. So, what put you on this path? Were you always interested in brewing, or you just liked beer and fell into it?
So I was cooking a lot. My wife was a lawyer, and she was coming home, and I was a teacher, and I was basically waiting for her to make me dinner, and she said, "That's crazy. You should cook." So I got into cooking, and I just
Probably not as politely as that.
maybe, and I learned that I loved cooking. And about 10 years ago, I started brewing just for fun with some colleagues. I just did it once or twice. It immediately clicked, and I found that it was this thing I could be, wonderfully creative with. You could make beer with anything you wanted to, and I found that it made me a little more popular with coworkers.
Yes, beer will do that.
And I started brewing for my father-in-law, and I got a lot of encouragement, and people put up with me learning. And then I went to the library, and I read all the books on the topic, and then I joined the Boston Homebrew community, which is www.wort.org, and met all sorts of brewers, and I just kept getting more and more into it. And eventually, after I learned how to make good beer, with proper sanitation, not the kind of homebrew that scares people away, but actually, beer that tastes good, I bumped into my friend and partner now, and I was thinking about trying to open up a place in Medford, and he said he was too, and we put it together. He's a businessman, and between the two of us, bringing both those things to the table, it took us about a year of planning, but we managed to get the licenses and to get the beer into stores, and it worked out. So it was kind of a combination of luck and also having put in a decade of practice.
And a couple of drinks with conversations.
Probably, perhaps.
So you had said that you had mentioned you had a vision of like a central meeting place type thing.
Yes.
For someplace in Medford.
Yes. So my vision is basically that with the loss of the bookstore, etc., that there isn't a sort of normal congregating spot for adults other than what we currently have. And so the idea would be to have a place where you could go and have a locally made beer, talk with friends, and then if it all works out, you'd have music, not necessarily like heavy metal drums, but basically acoustic-based music, and then also nights where there were readings and the ability to give back to the community, to have support for local charities, and then also, because one of my other passions is jogging and running marathons and stuff, to have like 5Ks and sort of do the sort of local stuff that most breweries do, that sponsor races.
Right, and people show up because they get free beer at the end.
Yes, and also to try to pair with people who are making food locally, so to try to figure out what we can do to make a place where people are comfortable, hang out. You're not going there to get drunk. You're going there to talk to your neighbors, and also to have
kind of like a European pub style.
Yeah, and also sort of like what you're seeing kind of pop up around like Night Shift and things like that, and down the road in Malden, my friend's Idle Hands. There's a place where you can go, sit after work and talk, taste interesting beers. If you want just the beer you grew up on, a straight ahead lager, there's that too, but there are also different flavored things that are hoppy, things that have fruit and spice and herb and kind of fun stuff. What's the idea?
What's the difference between the Medford Brewing Company beer is a American Pale Ale?
Bingo.
What's the difference between that and an IPA, an Indian Pale Ale?
That's a great question. So basically, you want to think of it as sort of like the younger brother, or the smaller, lighter version. It's usually about 1 to 1.5% alcohol, maybe even 2% alcohol less. So our Pale Ale is 6%, which is a fairly strong Pale Ale. Sierra Nevada is sort of the benchmark, so it's about 5.4. We can quantify how bitter a beer is with numbers. We call them bitterness units, BUs or IBUs, but basically bitterness units. And our beer is in the mid-30s. An IPA begins usually around 45 or 50 and can comfortably be 70. So an IPA basically could be about twice as bitter as our beer, but only be about 1 to 1.5% alcohol points.
Is the
more strong.
Is the American Pale Ale easier to make than an IPA? Is that the reason why you chose that one as the first one to come out?
And the reason why I chose it is because for two reasons. One is it's the beer that I've made the most. It's the beer that I made for my family, and the recipe that I've been brewing for 9 years. But it's also because there's so many IPAs that I wanted to contribute something that wasn't just another IPA initially. I feel like it's kind of glutted. So by putting that out first, I felt like there weren't as many other examples of it, and somebody who was looking for hops because they thought, hey, this is great, it's a new thing, I'm really getting into hoppy beers, but they didn't necessarily want to get wasted. They wanted to drink 1 or 2 beers and not fall over. That seemed to be the space that was available on the beer shelf, but also I'm hoping in consumers' refrigerators, because if you come home after work and you want to have 1 beer and then you want to do things, an IPA could be your best bet if you're our size.
Several IPAs.
But for my wife, etc.,
Yeah.
she doesn't necessarily want to peel your face off bitter beer, and we're going to be making an IPA in about a month.
So that's a good. What other flavors or whatever will you be coming out with?
So the plan right now is to have a pale ale, and then within about 6 weeks to 8 weeks, we're going to have an IPA. I've been brewing it for the last year over and over. It's actually in my basement. I'm going to be bottling it tonight, and in 10 days I'll be able to tell if it's good enough.
That's great.
And then we're working on a lager for what I would consider probably the majority of American beer palates is basically a lager. But within the world of lager, there are lots of different kinds. So I'm going to be making a Pilsner, because there are all sorts of different kinds of lagers. Some are dark, some are it just means that it's a beer that's made cold. It doesn't mean it's a beer style. So and after that, we're going to be making a double IPA.
Nice.
So that's the
awesome.
first year of Medford beers. But if you come by my basement and knock on the door, I can give you beers made with plums, with raspberries, with cocoa nibs, with oak, with grapes, with everything.
I wasn't aware that you could do so much with beer, like the different flavors and adding things into it.
Yep. And I like to think of it like, I like to talk about it like a tomato sauce, where you can have if you have a base tomato sauce, you can go in so many different directions with it.
That's awesome.
And so the same thing with beer.
Very versatile.
Yep, it's completely versatile, and you can make a beer that fits every weather and every occasion. And so at home I like to make a lot of novelty beer
That's great.
because it's smaller batches. So if you make 5 gallons of it, you'll probably be able to give it away.
Mm-hmm.
For Halloween, I always make pumpkin beer made with sugar pumpkins. So I roast them and then caramelize them, add them to my mash, and then I source from Penzies in Arlington. I get pumpkin spice
Mm-hmm.
and basically make an authentic pumpkin beer with pumpkins.
So everybody comes to your house for like Thanksgiving and stuff because
There's
pretty
pumpkin beer.
popular. Yeah. That's all. Is there a website for the Medford Brewing Company?
Yeah, it's mbrewing.com.
Awesome.
And you can reach me to talk about beer at max@mbrewing.com. And we have, from there you can also see us on Twitter, Instagram, and we're also Medford Brewing Company on Facebook.
And I'll make sure to put it down in the notes underneath, different links for all the different things we've talked about today.
Yep.
Thank you very much for taking the time, Max.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Right on.